Welcome to the Hard Hat Training Series. We have just a few minutes to cover the ins and outs of the required pre-shift or pre-trip inspection. I want to get right down to the point. I know these inspections can seem pointless, monotonous, repetitive, or even a waste of time. I've seen a lot of operators whip through them without really paying attention, more out of habit than anything. I've also seen even more skip them altogether. But the reality is, inspections are required of you daily because every day brings with it the potential for accident. That's the life of those working on or around heavy equipment. So under no circumstances should you skip or skimp when it comes to consistently and thoroughly inspecting your equipment prior to use. Inspections are preventative in nature, meaning if you do them right, they will prevent accidents from happening. They might even save your life or the lives of those you work with. Case in point, just over a year ago, an asphalt worker was struck and killed when a coworker in a skid steer suddenly backed up and struck him. And how did this happen? It's easy to say negligence, but quite often it is so much more than that. In fact, usually it's a lot of little things that lead to big accidents. In this particular case, as is common in many similar accidents, investigators discovered that both the backup alarm and the backup camera were not working. In fact, the backup camera had been removed altogether. While the company had been performing pre-shift inspections, they had not taken the time to fix or replace faulty equipment, which they deemed unimportant. To make matters worse, outside of a quick do this, don't do this, walk around from a senior worker, no one had received training specific to pre-shift inspections or safe operations. These oversights, among others, took the life of a seasoned worker who was looking forward to retirement. Hopefully, avoiding this kind of tragedy is the reason we will be walking you through how to do a pre-shift inspection, what to look for when doing one, and what to do if you find something wrong. Of course, like any task, before you begin you need to make sure you have the appropriate gear for the job. Most often that entails PPE like a hard hat, safety glasses, gloves, and steel-toed boots. If you're working around other equipment that is coming and going, you'll want to have a high visibility vest too, or you'll want to mark off the area. You may also want or need things like ear protection or a mask to prevent the inhalation of dust or other harmful agents. Some other items will be helpful. We've laid them out on the table here. A flashlight so you can better see hoses and wiring, a wire brush to brush away any rust or dirt or buildup, a piece of cardboard which we will discuss later, and of course a clipboard with an inspection checklist to properly record your observations. After all, doing the inspection ultimately means very little if you don't report your findings and act on them accordingly. You'll also want to make sure that you have the operator's manual handy and that any maintenance labels are readily available and legible. These are vital because they often contain the list of things you need to check as well as the manufacturer's recommendations for routine maintenance. With that in mind, let's go down the list. We're going to start with what is commonly called our key-off checks, meaning these are things we can inspect without the equipment running. From there, we will move on to the key-on checks where we inspect the operational functionality of this skid steer. Let's begin on the ground as we walk around looking at the exterior of the machine. The tires are often the easiest place to start. Check them over thoroughly. For the most part, you are looking for any signs of wear or damage that could affect performance and stability. This may include, but is not limited to, sufficient tread for the terrain, cuts or gouges in the rubber, embedded foreign material like rocks or rebar, missing bolts and nuts, cracked welds, leaks in the final drive, and underinflation. Make sure your inspection also covers the inside of the wheel, paying particular attention to the axles. Take the time to clear away any built-up dirt so that you can see things more clearly. Of course, many skid steers come equipped with tracks instead of tires. It's been said that the track system often accounts for 50% or more of a skid steer's lifetime repair bill. This is especially true if it isn't consistently and properly maintained. So don't overlook the value of checking each component thoroughly before use. Again, take the time to clear any compacted dirt or rock. This will ensure you can see any hidden damage. A clean track also improves efficiency, which consequently extends life expectancy. Generally speaking, the track system is made up of several basic components: the track and frame, steel guide wings or rubber lugs, the chain assembly, a series of rollers, pins, idlers, and sprockets, and in many cases, a rock guard. Depending on your machine, the track will be all steel, all rubber, or a combination of the two. While extremely durable, the track plates and grousers or cleats and their components still need to be looked over for any signs of damage or excessive wear. This will especially be true if the industry you're in, like demolition, continuously exposes the track to sharp objects. If your machine has the more common rubber tracks, pay attention to the tread. Once again looking for cuts, gouges, or embedded foreign material like rebar or other metal objects. The rollers, idlers, sprockets, teeth, guide wings or rubber lugs, and the rock guard also need to be inspected for damage. Check to make sure the guide wings are not broken or missing. Address any issues immediately if the damage will affect safe operations. Look over the drive seals for leaks. Make sure that you look over both sides of the track, including the axles on the inside. Track tension should be checked periodically according to manufacturer guidelines, which is typically every 50 hours. Loose tracks that are not maintained or tightened can cause the track to fall off. On the other hand, tracks that are too tight wear out faster and can cause damage to the sprockets, idlers, and rollers. Refer to your operator's manual for proper track tension maintenance procedures. Welds cover the chassis and the body of the skid steer from front to back, top to bottom. You don't need to spend a ton of time here. You're basically just looking for anything that jumps out as you as a serious or potentially serious crack, but do take the time to look at the undercarriage as well. As needed, take the time to brush away any dirt or rust in order to properly assess the integrity of the weld. It's not uncommon to find serious cracks forming underneath years of accumulated dirt and grime. Aside from the welds, look the body over for any damage that will hinder operations. It's not uncommon to see a machine with labels that are covered by mud, damaged or worn to the point of illegibility, or missing entirely. It's easy to overlook replacing these labels, yet the standards require it. Best practice is to avoid any mishaps by quickly replacing labels. A quick call to the manufacturer will usually do the trick. This goes for capacity and maintenance labels too. The steps and handrails may seem of little consequence, but it isn't unusual to see them damaged or caked in dirt. Because slips, trips, and falls are a frequent catalyst for workplace accidents, that damaged or dirty first step or handrail really should be appropriately addressed. As noted previously, cleaning off any buildup that might be hiding weaknesses or damage on the components will ensure accurate inspection results. Skid steers have two lift arms that are controlled by hydraulic cylinders. They will be in either a radial lift configuration or a vertical lift configuration. Either way, the arms need to be inspected for damage that could compromise the machine's structural integrity. Additionally, check all the linkage and grease points. Make sure there are no seized pins or areas lacking lubrication and that the overall structural integrity is still reliable. If more grease is needed, clean the area well, and then add grease according to the manufacturer's guidelines. Too little naturally causes excessive wear, but too much can also result in energy loss, accelerated wear, and component failure. Attachments go through a lot of wear and tear too, so you'll want to pay particular attention to them. The bucket, of course, is the most common. Closely inspect the cutting edge of the bucket. It should be free from excessive damage, as should the mounting plate and any securing hardware like pins and bolts. If you're using forks, inspect them as well, looking at it from various angles for cracks, chips, bends, or other signs of blunt force. Bent forks are usually the result of improperly engaging a loader, carrying a load on the fork tips, or hoisting a load from the end of one fork, which is not approved. Make sure the tines are set to the appropriate width and securely fastened. Skid steers are known for a multitude of attachments that can be used. Sweepers, backhoes, graders, augers, plows, aftermarket hard tracks, bale spears, and mulchers, just to name a few. In fact, there are so many we can't rightly go over them all here. Just know that the same principle applies to any other attachments used in connection with or in place of the traditional bucket. If any components show signs of damage that will prevent them from working properly or staying securely fastened to the equipment, don't use them. As noted, the lift arms and loader bucket all have hydraulic components vital to the machine's smooth, efficient, and safe operation. Yet we see a lot of loaders where these components are not properly cared for. Look for scratches, bends, or other damage that might prevent any such components from opening and closing as intended. The couplers should be fastened on correctly and free from leaks. The hoses need to be checked for leaks too, but if you see signs of leaking fluids, don't just place your hand back there. Even if you have a pinhole-sized leak, the extreme pressure in these hoses is enough to send that fluid stream right through your skin, leading to extensive tissue damage, and sometimes the complete loss of a finger, hand, or limb. This is the reason you will want to use the piece of cardboard or a clipboard we mentioned earlier. Just stick it behind the hose and then check it for any signs of leaking. Broken or leaking hydraulics are dangerous and will most certainly lead to catastrophic failure. If during your functional test you notice a loss of pressure, have difficulty maneuvering, experience high fluid temperatures, or hear abnormal noises, the hydraulic system is likely the issue. The machine should be taken out of service immediately until the issues can be appropriately addressed or repaired. The maintenance schedule in your operator's manual will guide you through checking the engine compartment. Sometimes you will also see labels affixed to the inside door of this compartment. These come with spaces where you can sign and date, signifying you've completed the inspection and required maintenance. You don't have to use them, but everyone on site should be on the same page. Using these labels is a great way to do so. Too often we see maintenance labels that are partially filled out with only 1 or 2 entries. As an inspector, it's hard to know then if these important inspections have been done since the last date. If you don't use them, make sure you keep some sort of record. Everyone should know where to access it and how to fill it out properly. Clear away any excessive dirt or grime buildup, especially around the fans, fins, and batteries. Make note of any loose connections or corrosion on the battery. Test the belts for proper tension and wear. Along with that, check any other wiring and hoses for cracks or leaks. Check to see that the fluids are sufficiently full. If any oil filters need to be replaced, do so. Take the time to clean the hydraulic fluid level indicator. If you can't see it at a glance because it is dirty or it is damaged, then it isn't doing you much good. You should be able to easily discern the fluid levels. Pull out the air filters and clean them off or replace them as necessary. The machine should have the correct fuel and sufficient amounts for the job prior to use. Skid steers come equipped with what is often called a zone of protection. This includes the ROPS, FOPS, and side screens. The term ROPS stands for Rollover Protective Structure. FOPS, on the other hand, is short for Falling Object Protective Structure. True to their name, these systems are in place to protect you in the case of an accident, and there are strict standards governing their structural integrity. If they have been compromised by way of a rollover or some other incident, then it shouldn't be used until it can be further inspected and approved by an engineer or appropriately fixed. The same goes for if any foreign objects have been welded onto it without manufacturer approval. In a recent incident, a worker was using a skid steer to backfill soil into an excavation. At some point, the ROPS had been altered by an operator in order to increase visibility, and it did, but it also weakened the overall structure. So when the ground under the machine suddenly collapsed and the machine fell into the excavation, that protective structure gave way, fatally injuring the operator. There are several lights on a skid steer, front spotlights, as well as back brake and reverse lights, and they each have a specific purpose to increase the visibility and extend vision during darkness or inclement weather. Missing or broken lights are common to see, but the standards require you to change them out. Don't chance having an accident because you couldn't see clearly. Now let's take a look inside the cab. And while we're there, we will perform our key-on checks. These are all about testing the functionality to make sure the machine does what it's supposed to do. It's as simple as that. Of course, before moving into the cab, you'll want to make sure you use the 3 points of contact as you get inside. The operator's manual is required to be on the machine in a legible condition. Every operator should read it and be familiar with its contents, especially the section relating to hazards and safe operation. The cab should not look like your childhood closet. We often see tools, trash, window cleaner, drink bottles, and even fire extinguishers spread across the floor. But these are things that need to be stowed properly so as not to distract or impede pedal operations. This is especially true if your particular model relies on foot pedals to control forward and backward movement. Make sure the seat is in good condition and can be easily adjusted to fit your needs. MSDs, or musculoskeletal disorders, are considered the single largest category of workplace injuries and lost work time. That being said, it's important you take care of your back by making sure the seat is not falling apart. Safety restraint systems are designed to prevent operation prior to certain tasks being performed. Typically, the restraint system in a skid steer consists of a seatbelt or lap bar, or both. Due to the interlock controls, the machine usually won't allow the arms to be lifted, or sometimes it won't even turn on until one or both safety restraints have been engaged. The restraint system, in conjunction with the interlock controls, should be tested and never removed or disabled. As part of this system, the seatbelt is a device designed to save your life. If it is tearing or unable to lock in properly, it needs to be replaced. Some belts actually expire after a period of time, so you'll want to be aware of any upcoming expiration dates. Just pull it out and check the tag on the side to know for sure. Like the exterior labels, warning labels on the inside of the cab are just as important and need to be replaced if missing or if the message or safety principle is no longer clear. Keep the glass and mirrors clean in front of you, behind you, above you, and to the sides. Your ability to see clearly and instantly detect if there is something wrong could be the difference between a safe workplace and one prone to accidents. Because you're working in dusty conditions, filters should be checked and replaced regularly. The inner cab filters tend to be ignored most often, meaning they are not doing their job and the air inside the cab is not as comfortable nor as safe as it should be. Skid steers will typically have a fire extinguisher mounted behind the seat by the back window. It should be in working condition and tested according to the standard. You do not want to discover the extinguisher isn't working while trying to put out a fire. Generally speaking, the instrument panel should be properly labeled. You need to know what each button, dial, lever, pedal, or switch does and what any indicators mean. You also need to take a moment to make sure these function as designed. Heaters and air conditioning are vital when working in hot or cold conditions. If they're not working, get them fixed instead of adding layers or keeping the door open for additional airflow. The horn can be an extremely important tool. Test it so you rely on it as needed to warn other vehicles or pedestrians of your presence. The arm and bucket controls need to be properly labeled as well. Go through each of them, like lifting and lowering the arms, tilting the bucket, and floating, to make sure they respond without delay or other issues. This, of course, holds true for other attachments you may be using. Once they're connected, you should always test them before use. To further test the functionality of the machine, you will need to put it in motion. Find a level piece of ground. Then turn the skid steer by testing both the right and left tracks separately. Then test both at the same time, drive forward and backward. Stop and go several times, paying particular attention to the response time. When backing up, make sure the backup camera and alarm are operational. As alluded to at the outset of this video, the backup alarm must be fully functional and loud enough for others to hear. The parking brake or P-brake also needs to be tested and proven to be in proper working order. And that's all there is to it. It doesn't have to be overly extensive. In fact, if you're doing them often and maintaining the machine or addressing issues as required, then your walk-around inspection becomes just that, a fairly quick walk-around. In all cases, if you find damage, record it and report it. If it poses a threat to safe operations, lock and tag out the machine. Find another one to use or suspend operations until the one you need is fixed. Too often we see operators justifying small issues in order to get the job done now. We understand the importance of time and efficiency and deadlines and money, but at the end of the day, these things pale in comparison to someone's health and well-being. Certainly, someone's life is worth more than deadlines and money as well. Remember, it is often several small issues that have been overlooked over time that collectively lead to one big accident. The pre-shift inspection is designed and required for the sole purpose of helping you discover and address those small issues so you can get your job done safely. Good luck and stay safe.